saw that Han Yu-hyun had come to their aid, and with his square attack, he set fire to the entire area in front of him, destroying the monsters. As Han Yu-jin used his ability to destroy the monsters, he looked at his brother with a happy look and said happily, "Yu-hyun!" As time passed, his flames filled more and more areas, and the heat from them only increased, leaving the enemies no chance of survival. The newly awakened huntress, Park Aram, said in surprise, "Wow, what is this? He just burned it in one go." As Han Yu-hyun finished his mission to destroy the monsters, pieces of burnt flesh flew around him, burning to ashes and falling to the ground like ordinary ashes. Standing behind his younger brother, Han Yu-jin said in alarm, "Hyung, you came." Hearing these words, Han Yu-hyun looked at his older brother with an angry look and said angrily, "Hen." Grabbing his brother and shaking him, the younger man said to him, "Do you even know how worried I was when I got the phone call on the way? How many times do I have to tell you not to wander around outside? I should lock you up from now on." While the educational process was taking place, a girl landed behind the brothers. When Han Yu-jin saw her, he said, "It's okay. You don't have to worry anymore. I found it." Pointing to the girl behind them, he said, "Just in time, a newly awakened S-class, Miss Park Aram." She looked around the abyssal head and said uncertainly, "Hello." Looking at the newcomer, she said, "Wow, it's really the head of the Abyssal Guild." After thinking about it, she heard, "I've decided to make a contract with her." After saying this, Han Yu-jin spoke boastfully, "Well, what do you think? You won't have any complaints about the S-class security, right?" To which Hyun replied, "I think she's still a minor. What about her guardian?" Hearing such an unexpected question from his younger brother, to whom he had introduced his new bodyguard, Han Yu-jin said in confusion, "Oh, that. Guardian. How shall I say?" Without hesitation, Han Yu-jin said, "I was thinking of becoming her guardian." After saying this, the news shocked Han Yu-hyun. Hearing his elder brother speak like this, Han Yu-hyun spoke to him. What are you talking about? Not a sponsor, but a guardian?" To which he replied, "Sponsor and guardian are different." Handing the weapon back to Kim Sung-han and thanking him, she asked what they meant, and he explained, "A simple sponsor would not be able to participate in your affairs. Therefore, he would not be able to protect you, even if you entered into an unfavorable contract." Continuing his explanation, the hunter said, "But the guardian is the legal guardian of the minor hunter. To be more precise, he plays the role of a parent." Hearing this, the girl approached the brothers and said in surprise, "Are you serious? You would do such a thing?" Hearing the girl's words, the younger brother said, "That's right, Han. Why would you care about someone else's child?" Hearing this, Han Yu-jin said, "Your uncle is a jerk. How can I just let it go? But well, it's up to you, Aram." Hearing this, Han Yu-hyun said, Yeah. Han Yu-hyun grabbed his elder brother and exclaimed, "I can't let this happen, even for Hyun's safety." There have been more than one or two instances of a high-ranking awakened using violence against a low-level guarantor. Moreover, what S-class would obediently follow an F-class? Pointing to the S-class awakened girl, Han Yu-hang spoke in anxiety, worried about his brother. What if this child attacks Jin? Hearing the student's statements and the premature conclusions and accusations against her, the girl said, "I am not attacking. I am kind." After considering all the possible bad outcomes, Han Yu-hyun said to her, "I'd rather be the guardian than Jin." Hearing this statement from the head of the Abyssal Guild, Park Aram spoke to him in an irritated voice. "I don't want to. Uncle promised to do it." Hearing her words, Han Yu-hyun said, "You say that now, but no one knows what might happen later. Who knows what you will do with him?" She replied, "I will not do that. I have a contract to protect him. Are you planning to do that yourself?" Hearing this quarrel, Han Yu-jin said, "Hey guys." After finishing the conversation, Han Yu-hyun grabbed his brother and carried him away, saying, "There's nothing more to discuss here. Let's go home, Jin." Seeing this, the girl grabbed Jin's hand and said, "Where? Don't interfere. Let go of me." During the quarrel and trying to take and hold Han Yu-jin, both hunters grabbed him and simply tore off his hand ligaments. Jin immediately lost consciousness after experiencing a painful shock. Realizing that something had happened, Han Yu-jin said nervously, "Jin, are you okay?" To which the worried girl also added, Uncle." Hearing these cries from the two opponents, Han Yu-jin spoke to them in an angry tone. "Get away from me, both of you." Seeing that his brother was injured, Han Yu-hyun said in concern, "Are you okay, Jin? Should I call a healer? Do you want to drink some medicine?" Pointing his finger at his younger brother, Jin said, "Hey." Interrupting the unnecessary quarrels and discussions about who could do what best, Han Yu-jin spoke to his brother. "Han Yu-hyun, is this how I raised you?" Pointing his finger at his younger brother, Han Yu-jin said angrily, "It's Aram's right to choose a guardian, so why are you interfering? Moreover, if you are the head of the guild, be glad that I brought the S-class." Pointing at Kim Sung-han, Han Yu-jin said, "And why go home? Who's going to clean up this mess? You'll keep poor Mr. Kim Seong-han waiting. Go do your job right now, guild leader. Hearing such orders from his older brother, the younger one said in confusion, Later, we'll talk more. Bye. I'll finish my work quickly and come back. After sending his younger brother off to do the work of the head of the hunting guild, Han Yu-jin stood in the middle of the ruined area and said with a wide shrug, Ah. Standing behind Han Yu-jin, Park Aram said angrily, This is the head of the Abyssal Guild? He doesn't look like what they said he was. She thought to herself, I used to like him when I thought he was handsome. Hearing these words from the girl, Han Yu-jin spoke to her in a commanding tone, pointing to a place. Park Aram, this also applies to you. Don't come any closer. Stay there. Seeing Han Yu-jin clutching his injured arm, Park Aram spoke to him. Sorry. I can't control my strength. Is your shoulder okay? To which the boy replied, Yeah, it's a little dislocated. What's more important is, after saying this, Han Yu-jin went to pick up the pair of shoes that the girl had lost and said, Here, your shoes. If you can't control your power, I'll put them on for you. As Han Yu-jin put the shoes on the girl's feet, he said to her, These shoes are so old, and the size doesn't fit. To give me something like this. This damn uncle. As Han Yu-jin put her old shoes on her feet, he said confidently, We'll go get a pair of new shoes tomorrow, okay? As she sat there, watching him put her shoes on, she said happily, Hey, it's kind of shaking, don't you think? Hearing this, Jin said in surprise, What trembling? Hearing that Han Yu-jin didn't understand what she was talking about, the girl spoke to him. Why, it's in dramas, and it's something you do. When she saw that a fly had landed on the boy's head, she wanted to swat it away, but she didn't calculate her strength and overdid it, exclaiming, Ah, a fly. Han Yu-jin flew backwards from the blow, exclaimed in irritation with a broken nose, Yes, it's not like I'm trembling. My heart is about to burst. To which the girl said in confusion, Sorry, I'll be careful. As Han Yu-jin tied his shoes, he said to the girl, I just care. Hearing this, she asked, What? He replied, You asked me why I was doing so much the other day. After saying this, Han Yu-jin continued, I did this because your story does not seem alien to me. My own parents died. It was hard, recalling his years of living alone with his younger brother and how they had to survive. Han Yu-jin said, When I think about how things could have changed if we had a reliable support. Continuing his story, Han Yu-jin said to Park Aram, Well, I realize that I don't look that reliable. After hearing this story from her future guardian, the girl said to him in a tender voice, Uncle, you also seem to be quite reliable. Hearing this from the girl, Han Yu-jin exclaimed, Oh, really? Yeah? To which she replied, Well, as far as I can tell, you're the one who asked a middle school student for protection. After saying this, she added happily, But that's okay. In the future, please take good care of me, Uncle Guardian. Han Yu-jin replied, Okay, please take care of me as well. Then, deciding that now was the time, Han Yu-jin spoke to the girl. This will never be able to compare to your parents' love, but Han Yu-jin said to Park Yoon-rim in a strange tone, Aram, do I love you? Hearing this, the girl suddenly laughed and said, Ah, why are you doing this all of a sudden? And a notification appeared in front of Jin's face. S-Class Awakened Park Aram has been positively affected by the code word. As soon as this happened, an uncle ran toward the girl and the boy from the direction of the vault, shouting, Park Aram! When he reached a certain place and saw his niece, the uncle said, So there you are. I was so worried about you. Hey. Looking at the girl, the uncle kept looking up and down with anxious eyes and said, By the way, are you really awake? Immediately betraying his stinginess and his goal of profit, he said, It is said that the awakened ones earn mountains of money. Hearing this, the boy and girl were surprised. There is still this problem. As soon as this happened, an uncle ran toward the girl and boy from the direction of the storage facility, exclaiming, Park Aram! When he reached a certain place and saw his niece, the uncle said, So there you are? I was so worried about you. Hey. Looking at the girl, the uncle kept looking up and down with anxious eyes and said, By the way, are you really awake? Immediately betraying his stinginess and his goal of profit, he said, It is said that the awakened ones earn mountains of money. Hearing this, the boy and girl were surprised. There is still this problem. Realizing that the uncle was not there because he was worried about his niece, the girl grabbed an umbrella and continued, I was so worried when I lost you. Approaching the door with the boy, the uncle asked her in a sly voice what he was most interested in at the moment. But not now. So, is it true that you have awakened? Hearing this question from her uncle, the girl answered him, Yes. Yes. Hearing this, her uncle exclaimed with joy, S-Class? So now we have a lot of money waiting for us. After saying that, the girl looked back at Han Yu-jin and added in a worried voice, Also, I'm leaving home. I have a contract with this uncle now. Hearing this, the uncle angrily exclaimed, What? Hearing this news, The uncle, realizing that he was losing his golden opportunity, exclaimed angrily, "What are you talking about? Hey, why would a 16-year-old leave home?" Hearing this, Han Yu-jin spoke to his uncle. 16 years old, Han Yu-jin walked over to him and said, "According to a special law, a hunter can become independent at the age of 14. When he heard this, he exclaimed in irritation, "A special law? I've never heard of such a thing." Unable to believe what the young man had said, the uncle immediately rebutted him, trying to bring his niece back, and exclaimed, "Stop talking nonsense." Before he could say this, Han Yu-jin handed him his phone. The audio of the incident at the restaurant where he had pushed Jin was on, and it was playing. "Can't we have a normal conversation? Why are you pushing people? You were going to hit her like that, weren't you? A weak middle school student." Hearing this, my uncle exclaimed in alarm, "What is this?" Hearing this question from his less self-confident uncle, Han Yu-jin spoke to him. "I'll also get the restaurant's CCTV footage." Hearing this, his uncle said in alarm, "Huh?" As they started to quarrel with each other over this, Han Yu-jin spoke to him. "It's been clear for a long time that you're not a good guardian. And recently, you abandoned this child to save yourself." His uncle replied, "When did I do that?" Standing next to Han Yu-jin and her uncle, who were arguing, Park Aram said sadly, "What's with the mountains of money? How much more are you going to extort from the child?" At that moment, her uncle shouted, "Shut up! Who fed and raised her?" After saying this, the uncle tried to snatch the phone from the boy's hands, but the boy dodged him and said, "That's enough. If you ever dare to approach Miss Aram again," to which he replied, "You bastard! You planned it all from the beginning." Holding the boy by the collar, the uncle began to threaten him because he wanted to take his niece, saying, "I'm going to file a complaint against you, and you're going to be punished." Just as he was about to say this, Park Aram interrupted him in the middle of his sentence, driving her umbrella into the ground between the uncle and the boy. Seeing the strength of his girl, the uncle exclaimed in fright, "Ah, what the hell just happened here?" Seeing what the girl had just done, Han Yu-jin spoke to her. "Hey, Aram, awakened people can't harm ordinary people." Hearing Han Yu-jin say this, the girl suddenly picked up her umbrella and said in alarm, "Oh my God, uncle, come on. What can I do if you keep letting your hands go?" Seeing that the girl had become quite strong and had broken the umbrella in her hands, her uncle said in fright, "What? What are you talking about? You saw it too. That bastard hit me on purpose." After breaking the umbrella in half and then crushing it in her hands, the girl said with a joyful look and a smile on her face, "Oh, what are you talking about?" Her expression immediately changed, and her mood turned bad, emitting a terrifying aura, and she added, "Uncle, you pushed him and then just fell down, didn't you?" Seeing that things were not going well, the uncle looked at his niece with a frightened look and thought, what the hell? Is this the middle school student I used to see at home every day?" Unwittingly applying an intimidating aura, the girl, clutching her umbrella, looked at her uncle. He in turn looked at her with a frightened look and thought, "I feel like I'm standing in front of some kind of predator." Standing next to this whole spectacle, Han Yu-jin heard a system alert. Fear resistance activated. Then he thought, this aura of intimidation. She's definitely S-class. Slowly approaching her guardian, the angry girl spoke to him. "Uncle, you must know that you are not in a position to be grateful to me." She crumpled the broken pieces of the umbrella into a ball and threw it out of her hands and said, "A guardian? Don't be ridiculous. You didn't even buy me a miserable umbrella." Stepping back from his angry niece, the uncle fell to the ground and started to crawl away. But then he saw the umbrella rolled into a ball and the girl's words, "If I had my way, I would turn you into this." Approaching her frightened uncle, the girl grabbed him by the shoulder and said sternly, "But I'm going to turn a blind eye to this. Do you know why?" Holding her uncle's shoulder, the girl leaned toward him and spoke softly, "Because you are worthless. You are not worth an ounce of my attention, man." After saying this, and looking at him with a haunting gaze, she added, "Remember that, and go on with your insignificant life." She turned away from her uncle and stood upright in front of him and added one last time, "If you do not follow my advice and continue to cling to me, or make scandals with your uncle, attracting attention," with her hands at her sides, the girl finished her intimidation, "then I will definitely not turn a blind eye." After completing her intimidation, the girl happily exclaimed to Han Yu-jin, "How was it? I repeated after you. Did you get it right?" Hearing this, the boy thought, "You can't even take a sip of cold water in front of children. A bad example is contagious." And that's how Park Aram became one of the members of the Abyssal Guild. And it was thanks to her that Han Yu-jin was able to be released from prison, but while enjoying his life the next morning, as Han Yu-jin was watching his third dream, the door to his room suddenly opened with a bang. Opening the door to the boy's room, his younger brother, Han Yu-hyun, entered, and seeing him, the older brother exclaimed in irritation, "Who the hell is Han Yu-hyun?" Han Yu-jin immediately got up from the bed and looked at his brother walking confidently toward him. What is wrong with you? What has come over you this morning? Holding out his hand to his elder brother, Han Yu-hyun spoke sternly to him. Give me that, the one you bought yesterday. Hearing this, his elder brother called out to him in fright. E? What? Hey, are you talking about shopping at the mall? Did I spend too much? I thought it was a good idea to spend all this money. Hearing this, the younger man exclaimed to him, That's not the point. It's an infinite pill of dark poison. When Han Yu-jin learned about the pill, he held out the pill to Hyun and said, P-pill? This one? Seeing it, Han Yu-hyun immediately snatched it from his brother's hand. Why, actually no. How did you even know that I bought it? Holding the pill in his hands, Han Yu-hyun said in anxiety. Jin, you don't trust me that much? He exclaimed in surprise. Eh? What are you talking about? Hearing this question from his brother, Han Yu-hyun threw his arms around his elder. Seeing this, Jin spoke to him. Yu-hyun? What is wrong with you? To which he replied, Jin, didn't you buy it? Being ready to die if necessary. Hugging him, the younger man added, If my enemies target you, you will be my weak point. That is why you were ready to poison yourself so that they could not use you as a hostage. Hearing this, Han Yu-jin was surprised and thought, No way! Letting go of his elder, Hyun said to him, You care so much about me, but you still never use something like that, okay? The elder replied, No, this. Continuing to admire his brother, Han Yu-hyun said, Even if something like this happens, I will definitely come to rescue you. Hearing this, Han Yu-jin thought, I bought this to use when clearing the dungeon alone, secretly from you. But now I can't say I'm immune to L-class poisons. Hearing all this from his younger brother, Han Yu-jin replied, Oh, okay. Thank you, brother. But in his mind, he was thinking, I have a feeling that there are more and more misunderstandings. After settling this question, Han Yu-jin and his brother went down the elevator. Then Jin said, So everything is settled with Aram? Han replied, Yes. Captain Seok went to her house yesterday. After saying this, Han Yu-jin added, I checked the registration copy of this so-called uncle, then this, then that. Apparently he spent billions of what belonged to Aram on his own business. Recalling the deal with his uncle, Hang added, Instead of saying we wouldn't sue, he wrote a note saying he wouldn't approach or contact her in any way. He won't bother us anymore. We successfully settled all the issues with him and secured it with a small amount of money. When they arrived at the right floor and got off the elevator, Han Yu-jin asked, Did Aram really agree not to sue? Hyun replied, Yes, she said she just doesn't want to get involved with him anymore. Hearing this, Han Yu-jin replied to his brother, That's true. Now that amount of money will probably seem ridiculous to her. Han Yu-hyun said, She has also gradually finished adapting to her abilities. As Han Yu-hang approached the guild's training hall, he added, Looks like she spent all of last night in the training room. As Han Yu-hyun entered the training room, he spoke to his older brother. This room can withstand even S-class strength, so she can use it to her heart's content. After saying this, and turning their gaze to the training room, Han Yu-hyun and Han Yu-jin were frozen in place. They saw the destroyed room in front of them. Looking at what was left of the room after Park Aram's training, Han Yu-jin said to his younger brother in surprise, Oh. Looking around and heading inside, Han Yu-jin added, You say it can even withstand the power of an S-class? To which he replied, Yes, but walking through the training room, one could hear the noise coming from inside as the girl was training. Continuing her training, the girl jumped to the ground after flying, and abruptly standing up began to practice her punches. After a few combinations in the air, she immediately said, A day without a shadow, and used her new skill, which she had learned quite recently. As she said this, she stamped her foot on the floor, and from there, shadows began to move in all directions, taking over more and more territory. As Han Yu-jin walked past the destroyed columns, he looked around the room and said in surprise, What's going on? The training room. Did something happen to Aram? As he said this, the dust in front of him immediately cleared, and a girl stood in front of him looking down. Feeling heavy in his legs, Han Yu-jin exclaimed in fright, Oh, I can't move! Seeing that Han Yu-jin had fallen into her trap, the girl took a deep breath and said, Skill activation. Han Yu-jin felt the shadows crawling over him and sucking out his strength, and he screamed in fright, What a power! Seeing that the shadows were on Hen exclaimed in alarm, Jin? After preparing for her next combination, the girl stopped in the middle of the room and began to gather all the shadows back. After gathering all of her shadows, which were spread around the room to return all of the power they had gathered back to their owner, Park Aram lifted her foot. After that, she gathered all her strength in her foot and stepped on the ground, leaving a crater in the place after her step. After completing all the preparatory steps, she rushed to meet Han Yu-jin, and stepping heavily on the floor that was sinking beneath her, she went forward. Gaining the necessary speed, the girl immediately swung her fist and shouted loudly to the entire training room, Oh! Her exclamation was followed by a powerful punch on the floor which destroyed the ground beneath her, creating a large crater. After completing her punching combination, she stood up and looked over to where Han Yu-jin and Han Yu-hyun were standing, wiping the sweat from her face after such a difficult combination and deciding to take a break. She suddenly heard shouts from nearby. "Jin, wake up!" Hearing these disturbing cries, she immediately looked around and shouted in the direction of the shouts. "Uncle!" Looking in the direction of the shouts, she saw Han Yu-jin, who was already in the process of leaving his soul, and who said, "So you've gotten stronger, Aram." And Han was shouting back at him, "Don't die, Jin!" Seeing that Han Yu-jin was already losing consciousness, Park Aaron immediately called out to him, "Uncle, wake up!" Hearing this, Jin said, "I'm strong." Oh? When Han Yu-jin regained consciousness and looked at the girl, he saw a completely different person speaking to him. "Are you all right, Uncle?" He replied, Who are you?" Hearing that Jeng did not know her, the girl rushed to him in alarm, saying, "Don't you remember? I'm Ariam." Hearing this, Jeng replied, "I know, but you've changed beyond recognition." To which Hyun replied, "The stylists have been working on her." Stepping back a bit to show off her new look, Park Aram spoke to him. "In the abyss, they fixed my image and told me that I will soon join the Hunters Association." When Han Yujin saw the girl's new look, he was surprised and said, "It suits you. All the sports drink commercials are yours, Aram." Hearing this, Park Aram said to Han Yujin, "Since I'm going to be on the air, I need to keep an eye on the picture. The Hermes style combined with the skill." To which Jin replied in surprise, "They do that too. Oh, right, the S-classes are the village." Showing off her new style, she continued, "I even prepared the Hunter's registration documents that can be presented. I'm constantly adding something because I'm also working on my skills." Holding her head, the girl said awkwardly, "I didn't notice that you came in, Uncle, so it's been a while." He replied, "So it was really your skills. What was all that about?" Recalling what she had used in a recent training session, the girl said, The first one was a cold breath. The freezing skill. You saw it last time, right?" Recalling further, the girl said, "Hermes shoes. It allows you to float in the air and instantly move short distances." Thinking about her new talents, she said, "A day without shadow casts a special buff over a large area. When used, it greatly increases the effectiveness of skills and attributes. I can also slow down my opponent by absorbing their shadow. This also gives me a corresponding buff." Hearing this information, Han Yu-jin spoke to Park Aram. "So you become even stronger by absorbing power from your surroundings? It is because of this skill that the training room has now turned into ruins." Hearing Jin's words, Park Aram said, "Oh, and there's one more. The last one. Body whiteness is a skill. It allows you to read information from a corpse." Hearing the characteristics of the last skill, Han Yu-jin spoke to her. "That's pretty creepy." She replied, "Really? It was supposed to be an attacking skill." Thinking about this skill, Han Yu-jin looked at the folder where she had written everything down and said, We'll hide the body whiteness for now." Hearing this, the girl exclaimed in surprise, "Hide it?" As he crossed this skill off Park Aaron's skill list, Han Yu-jin spoke to her. "You don't have to reveal all your skills when you register. Let's see." As Han Yu-jin looked over everything in the girl's file, he said, "Since it's like this, it's better to hide a few more details. On days without shadow, we'll only record the buff effect. And in the Hermes shoes, it's flying. It's cool at this level." After hearing all of this from Jin, Park Aaron spoke to him happily. "Uncle, you really are so good at this, just like an expert," he replied. "Oh, it's nothing. Have you mastered your power control now?" Han Yu-hyun blocked Han Yu-jin's path and covered him with his body, and spoke to the girl in an angry tone. "Hyun is so knowledgeable about everything because he went to all the trouble to find out the details for me. Keep your distance." Hearing Han Yu-hyun's objections, Park Aram replied, "Eh? Chairman, I didn't ask you, so why are you interfering?" He replied, "I didn't interfere. I just helped with the explanation. After all, this is my Jin." Jin replied, "Please stop." Suddenly thinking of something, and already creating a plan in his head, Han Yu-jin thought, "Haha, but it's possible." As Han Yu-jin thought of a plan to introduce Park Aram to the public, he said anxiously, "Yeah, it's going to be okay, right?" After a while, when Park Aram finished registering, a lot of people gathered outside the Abyssal Guild, and a car stopped there. Then someone in the crowd said, "An Abyssal car has just arrived. Miss Park Aram, the new S-class is coming out." Looking out from the crowd, Han Yu-jin was somewhere in the distance. Han Yu-jin was standing with Kim Sung-han, and the crowd was saying, "This is the birth of our country's 8th S-class combat hunter. Miss Park Aram only has 3 basic skills." Peeking out from his hiding place, the disguised Han Yu-jin said happily, "Great! Our Aram is doing great." Kim Sung-han replied, "Instead of acting like this, you should have just accompanied her." After saying this, Kim Sung-han added, "Miss Park Aram was disappointed because you didn't go with her." Jin replied, "Haha, I have a lot of bad memories of crowded places. After saying this, Han Yujin added, well, there is an end to resentment too. Now that she's going to be famous and rich, I'll definitely move to the background. Watching this beautiful girl appear in public, Han Yujin thought, there's no sign of the cold and arrogant ice witch Park Aram from the future that I know. Now instead, there is the confident, smiling middle school huntress Park Aram. Thinking back to that monster attack, Han Yujin said, the dungeon breakthrough that happened a few days ago was also not initially possible. Will everything be okay if the future I saw is changing so much? Thinking about this, Han Yujin immediately shook his head to try to forget those thoughts and said, no, what does it matter? What is good is good. What matters now is something else. Since I've come to the association, I need to see if there are any newcomers with good potential. Looking at the crowd, Han Yujin searched for those who could become a new high-level hunter and thought, there's an F grade over there. There's also an F grade over there. There's an E grade over there. An F grade over there. Surely finding another S class would be incredibly lucky, right? Analyzing everyone from just one side of the hiding place, Han Yujin thought, I'm unlikely to find any high-level, unawakened potential here. There is no point in wandering around here. Realizing this, Han Yujin decided not to stay in one place and went in search. Seeing Jin running off somewhere, Kim Sung-han shouted after him, Mr. Han Yujin, where are you going? As Han Yujin ran forward, he blew out the magic stone and thought, nothing is impossible. It all started when I turned back time to save my younger brother. While running through the crowd, the boy suddenly saw a boy and thought, if I was able to change things for the better for both Aram and Yu Hyung, maybe my skill was given to me for a reason. Catching up with the boy he had seen from a distance, Han Yu-jeng approached him and grabbed the boy's hand, thinking, to make him shine. And then he continued his train of thought, a rough diamond that comes across my eyes. Grabbing the boy's hand, he said in concern, who are you? Seeing his potential, Jin couldn't let him go. His card read, Awakened Yumeng Wu. Current grade is F, Awakening Potential, F, Optimal Starting Skill, Possible to Learn, SS grade. Grabbing the boy, he pulled away and asked in alarm, who? Jin replied, you're Man Wu, right? You, Man Wu, it's been so long. Don't you remember me? Han Yu-jin, Yu-jin. Startled by this sudden encounter, Yu Myung Wu spoke to him anxiously, rubbing his neck. I'm sorry, I really don't remember you. Seeing that the boy was very nervous, Han Yu-jin took off his mask and smiled happily, saying in a friendly tone, it's okay, we haven't seen each other for quite some time. It's quite normal. Looking at this guy, Han Yu-jin was also worried. To be honest, I don't know you either, but looking at the potential and incredible skill of this guy, he thought, unbelievable. Just look at this guy's skill. Goldforge Master, SS. Looking at this skill, Han Yu-jin was already imagining while thinking, just from the name alone, I can already tell that this is a special skill that is related to making equipment. Moreover, it's SS class. An SS blacksmith is a class act, creating equipment with his own hands that can hardly be bought even for hundreds of millions. Even 5 years later, there were no awakened ones with this skill. Already imagining mountains of wealth, Han Yu-jin thought, if I can learn this skill, I can make a bed of bags of money from all over the world. Looking at the frightened boy who didn't understand what was happening, Jin reflected. And all because of this guy who looks like a dead man, overwhelmed by life's problems. Looking into his personal file, Han Yu-jin said to him in surprise, have you been doing well? Have you also awakened? He replied sadly, yes, even though it's F grade. Having said that, the man continued, there is a 1,000,001 subsidy for registering an awakened person. Hearing this, Han Yu-jin said to him, oh brother, I'm also an F. Come with me to learn basic skills. Hearing this suggestion, Yu Meng-woo said sadly, no, I only came for the subsidy. You have to pay for basic training, and even with it, F classes are not needed anywhere. Hearing this, Han Yu-jin grabbed his arm, ready to say something, but Yu Meng-woo only added, I'm useless right now. Taking the hand of his potential SS class master, Han Yu-jin happily exclaimed, then get him to join our guild with me. Hearing this suggestion, the young man said in surprise. Trying to persuade the boy, Jin said, I'll make sure you get it for free. Just one word from me. Ha ha. Before he could finish, Jin interrupted Kim Sung-tan, grabbing him by the collar and pulling him toward him, saying, Mr. Han Yu-jin, only guild members can receive training for new hunters. Hearing this, Han Yu-jin said in a disgruntled voice, then make an exception for just one person. To which he replied, but the rules. When Yu Meng-woo saw the A-class warrior, he was frightened. Oh, Kim Sung-han of the Abyss? Looking at the boy and the high-ranking warrior, Yu Meng-woo said in surprise, Yu-jin, you two know each other? How? Hearing such surprised words from the boy, Jin said, oh, this is... Han Yu-jin pointed to himself and spoke to Yu Meng-woo. Actually, the head of the Abyssal Guild is my younger brother. Hearing this, the boy exclaimed in shock, What? The Abyssal Guild chief? Han Yujin stood up to his full height and spread his arms, and Yumeng said something to him. You've suddenly started to blind my eyes. To which he replied, Hoo, it's the aura of power. After saying this, Han Yujin added, I'll put in a good word for you in the abyss, so let's go train together, Mengwu. I'll lend you my equipment as well. Hearing this, the boy replied in surprise, Yes, even the equipment. Is that really possible? Hearing such an offer from a complete stranger, Yu Mengwu was embarrassed. But I can't even remember you. Hearing this, Han Yujin took his hand and said, Don't worry about it, just go along with it. I want to take care of you because you're a good person, right? Trying to gain more and more trust in order to recruit the boy, Zheng said with cat-like eyes, You really deserve to be treated like this. Seeing Han Yujin's dazzling aura radiating from him, Yu Mengwu said in confusion, I'm not really... Hearing that he actually deserved the kind treatment he was being offered, Yu Mengwu cried out, unable to hold back his tears. I do... And then, falling to his knees, he began punching the ground with his fists and sobbing loudly with happiness. Seeing Meng's strange behavior, Jin exclaimed in alarm, Mengwu! Sometime later, after the incident, Han Yujin stood by the machine that made hot tea and spoke to the boy. Drink, the tea is warm. As Han Yujin handed the cup of warm drink to his friend, he said, It would be better to buy expensive coffee at a cafe. To which Yu Myung-woo replied, It's okay. This is enough for me. Han Yujin looked at the quietly sitting boy who was holding a hot drink and smiling slightly and said to him, Are you calm? To which he replied, Yes. Wiping his eyes from tears, Yu Mengwu said to Zheng, I'm sorry for coming out of the blue like this. It's been too long since I've heard such words. He replied, It must have been hard for you. Hearing this, Yu Mengwu said, Yes, well, when I was a child, I had a talent for working with my hands, and I even received many awards for it. But in my adult life, it was of no use at all. Everyone just kept telling me to stop doing stupid things and start studying. And that's when everything went wrong. I was a total zero in my studies, a failure. My grades at the university were terrible. I couldn't get a job. And then there were family circumstances. Looking into his cup of hot drink, Yu Mengwu said with a heavy sigh, At some point, I found myself in such a deplorable state, with a lot of debt, an outsider with nowhere to go. After listening to Yu Myung-woo's entire story from A to Z, Han Yujin spoke to him in a sad voice. I understand. Remembering his past life, Zheng thought. Even after the world changed, everything remained the same. People are literally divided into classes. Recalling how he was looking for a squad to go and clear the dungeons, he was rejected, saying, And where are you going to go, Supporta? Only those with combat or healing skills are welcome. Thinking about how difficult it is for F classes to survive in this world, and even more so without the skills needed to clear dungeons, he continued, If he had gotten off this road, F class among the missions, F class in society, what would have become of Yu Mengwu in the original scenario if I hadn't met him? Sitting on the bench and thinking about this, Jin made up his mind. He might not have been able to ignite his talent. Maybe he would have continued to. It's okay in any case, Having finished his thoughts on how difficult it is to live for people with low and useless skills, Han Yujin abruptly stood up from the bench and exclaimed, All right, let's go. Looking at his friend, Han Yujin said, Hey, let's not get sour. Who cares if others don't understand? After all, we live in a world in which it is very difficult to survive on our own. Han Yujin hugged his lost comrade, pointing to the west, and said, Lift up your head with confidence. If you remain depressed, the money for the spinal surgery will disappear. Looking at the sunset, Han Yujin stood up from the bench and spread his arms, exclaiming loudly, I am incredible. Others just don't understand. I love myself. Han Yujin put his arms out to the side and turned to Yu Mengwu and spoke to him joyfully. Let's think like this, huh? Han Yujin looked at him with a joyful gaze, and he had already planned everything. But he added in a loud voice, Yu Mengwu! I love you too, my friend. Hearing these words from his mentor, Yu Myung-woo said to him, That's right, we'll do that. Thank you, Yu-jin. And immediately after Jin's words, a system notification sounded. Awakened Yu Meng-woo has received a favorable effect from the code word. After saying this, and having already set up his new comrade, whom he was able to recruit, Han Yu-jin said in disappointment, I thought this would be so easy to solve, but the next day when Han Yu-jin arrived at the guild and headed to the training center, the head of the Abyssal Personnel Department, Seok Shimeng, spoke to him in a firm tone. You can't. Sitting in the head of personnel's office with his friend, Han Yu-jin heard, Allowing a stranger to receive training for guild newcomers? To which Jin replied, Oh, come on, just this once. Hearing Han Yu-jin's request, Seok Shuman replied, To give in. Sending someone to study is like vouching for them. It will be rumored that such a privilege was given to a dog bone lying around. Seeing that these words had struck Yu Myung-woo to the ground, Han Yu-jin rushed to calm him down and exclaimed, "How rude! What do you mean, dog bone?" To which Seok Shumeng replied, "I only meant that they might say that somewhere." Hearing such counter-arguments in his direction, Han Yu-jin, holding his disappointed friend, said, "Come on, trust me for once, he really is an honest man." Hearing this, Seok Shumeng took off his glasses and said, "Of course I know that Mr. Han Yu-jin has outstanding insight. The fact that you found Miss Park Aram is an incredible achievement." After saying this, Mr. Seok Shumyoung immediately put on his glasses and adjusted them, adding, "However, well, it could have just been an accident." Hearing this, Han Yu-jin exclaimed, "What the hell is this?" Looking at Han Yu-jin, Seok Shumyeon spoke to him. "To be honest, I don't understand your intentions. Especially when you consider that just a few days ago, you fell for the broker's deception. You convinced the guild head to do business, and now you want to promote yourself?" After saying this, Song Shu-meng added, "To protect the security of the abyss, all of this is very undesirable." Hearing this, Yu Meng-woo said in a sad voice, "Ah, but Yu Jin is being insulted because of me." Listening to all this, Yu Meng-woo, unable to withstand the pressure, covered his face with his hands, ran out of the office, and exclaimed, "Stop it! I'm just going to leave." After leaving the office of the head of the personnel department, Han Yu-jin held his head and exclaimed in frustration, "Ah, that damn Seok-shu man. He's getting more and more cruel every time." To which Yu-mung added, "Scary person." Hearing this, Han Yu-jin took out his phone in frustration and said, "Wait, I'll ask my younger brother directly." Hearing this, Yu-mung answered him with a shake of his head, "That's enough. There's no need." Looking at Han Yu-jin, Yu Meng-woo smiled happily and said to him, "After all, you told me that I'm valuable. That's enough." After saying this, and catching Han Yu-jin's attention, Yu-mung continued, "Thanks to you, I have the will to live a little longer." Hearing these words from his friend, Jin was touched. "Meng-woo," he replied, "I will not be disappointed, but I will try to do what I can. To be honest, there are jobs for F-graders like me somewhere." Hearing his friend say this, Han Yu-jin looked at him in surprise. "Wow, really? Where is there such a thing?" Hearing Han Yu-jin say this, Yu Meng-woo said to him in a worried voice, "Yes, they said they would pick me up here." As he said this, a car pulled up to the boys. When the car door opened, someone's voice came out. "Yo, it's our Meng-woo!" When the door opened fully, they could see that there were a bunch of bandits in the car, and one of them said, "You've become a hunter, so now it's time to pay back your debts, right?" Hearing that he was being addressed, Yu Myung-woo turned his head to Han Yu-jin and said, "I'll go. I'm going to get stronger and make some money. I'll get back to you." When Han Yu-jin saw where Yu Myung-woo was going, he was surprised and said, "Wait, this looks wildly dangerous." After getting out of the car, one of the robbers put his hand on Yu Meng and spoke to him. "Our Meng-woo, did you get the subsidy?" Hearing these words from the robbers, Yu Meng-woo spoke in alarm, holding out his hand with the money. "Yes, here." After taking the money from him, the robber exclaimed, "You do realize that this is not enough, right?" Seeing what had just happened in front of him, Han Yu-jin, alarmed, called out to the robbers, "Well, wait a second. Who are you guys? Creditors? Where are you taking Meng-woo?" Hearing this loud speech from the guy standing next to Yu Myung-woo, one of the gang angrily exclaimed, "Huh? You find out. What are you going to do?" Hearing such a rude voice from one of the bullies, Han Yu-jin said in fright, "I also want to go with him." Hearing this, the gang of robbers also took Han Yu-jin with them. As they closed the car door and drove off, the atmosphere in the car was not good. Sensing that things were bad, Han Yu-jin said in a worried voice, "You borrowed money from terrible people." He replied, "The bank didn't give me a loan." After saying this, Yu Myung-woo added, "What's more important now is this. Why did you follow me? You have no debt." To which he replied, "How could I have let you go alone?" Hearing the two boys talking, one of the bandits said to Jin, "Do you know each other? Are you also awakened?" He replied, "Eek, yes, F class." Hearing the bandit's question, Yu Meng-woo said, "He's from Bez." Before he could say anything, Han Yu-jin closed his mouth and said, "We're childhood friends. We ran into each other by chance at the Hunters Association. He told me that there was a job that even F-graders could apply for, so I was curious." Hearing this, the gang boss said, It worked out well. Our friends, would you like to go to the dungeon to get us a magic stone? You know that guilds don't usually teach F classes." Having said that, one of the bandits added, "But we take everyone, even F grades." Hearing this, Han Yu-jin said in surprise, "Wow, really?" After telling him about the task they were going to do, one of the gang said, "And since you're a friend of Meng Du-yu's, we have a special relationship with you. Will you go with us?" Jin exclaimed, "Yes, let's go." In an attempt to lighten the atmosphere, Han Yu-jin said in alarm, "Oh my. I thought you were the terrible Hyuns, and you turned out to be such good people. Hey, 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 hey. Let's make a deal right away." After saying this, Han Yu-jin continued, "Thanks to you, I will get the job." In his mind, he imagined, a contract as an ore digger. I fell for it myself. They shoved me into the dungeons of F classes with no experience and no equipment, and they assign you to gather while the official guild members hunt. An unequal contract. As payment for security, they take a percentage of the profits. And if you're unlucky, it's quite common to be wounded or killed by a monster. Looking at his friend, Han Yu-jin thought, Yu Meng-woo, the future you was trampled on and died in a place like this? Without ever realizing your talent. As they approached the dungeon, the car driver said, "It will be enough to collect everything that looks valuable. You'll get rich in no time." Jin replied, "So we can just collect, right? A real fortune." After saying this, Han Yu-jin asked, "Where is your guild office?" He was told, "In Menmok, the Dawn." Hearing this, Jin said, "Menmok is the Dawn. It's not that far." As they approached his guild office and parked in front of the terrifying house, the driver exclaimed, "Here we are!" Getting out of the car, Han Yu-jin tried to keep his role in check and said happily, "Ooh, the Hope Assignment Center? What a good name." To which one of the bandits said, "Come on in." As Han Yu-jin followed one of the bandits up the stairs, he said happily, "The building may be old, but I feel the future is full of hope." When he reached the corridor, the boy said, "The office is on the second floor? The lighting is good. The stairs." As Han Yu-jin approached the office, he suddenly felt a blow to his back. It was one of the gang who pushed him to shut up. Unable to keep his balance, Han Yu-jin fell into the office and said in alarm, "Oh my God." Looking up, he saw many people in the office they had come to who also looked like bandits. Han Yu-jin looked up and saw all the bandits, and he cried out in pain, "Lord, what is this behind me? Ah! Ugh!" A second later, when Han Yu-jin regained consciousness, he heard the sound of kicks, and looking around, he saw Yu Meng-woo being kicked, and he exclaimed in fright, "Meng-woo!" Nervous, he exclaimed, "What are you doing all of a sudden?" Then one of the bandits grabbed him by the shoulder and said, "I'm sorry, they brought you here without any debts, but you should regret that you came here voluntarily." Holding his beaten comrade in his arms, Han Yu-jin looked at the bandits who were speaking. "You can enter here of your own free will, but you can't leave." Wiping his eyes from tears, Yu Meng-woo said to Han Yu-jin, "Yu-jin, I'm sorry. I had to go through all of this on my own. And because of me, you, who is free of debt, have also been put under the gun." Hearing this, Han Yu-jin, who was disturbed, said, "Meng-woo!" As soon as he said that, one of the gang members grabbed his shoulder and said, Yes, come here." Holding Han Yu-jin, he led him to the couch and sat him down, saying, "We need to make a deal right now." Holding out a piece of paper to the anxious young man, the boss of this gang of robbers said, "Here, put your fingerprint on it." Holding the agreement in his hands, he said, "Minus the commission, your profit will be 20%. You have no debts anyway, so you will make a lot of money." Demonstrating the contract, the boss added, "This is a specially created contract of the Awakened. Any violation of its terms will bring a D-class curse, so don't even think about breaking it." After placing the contract on the table, the gangsters sat Yu Meng-woo down on the couch and forcibly signed it with the boy's hand, saying, "Come on, sign." When Han Yu-jin heard the terms of the contract, he said to his boss, "I have one request." Hearing this, the boss replied, "What? Even if you beg, it won't work." Hearing this, Han Yu-jin spoke to the boss. "That's not the point. Can I compare the contracts? It would be insulting if I have the same conditions as him." Looking at his boss and his two burly bodyguards, Han Yu-jin continued, "I don't even have a debt." Hearing this, the boss and his accomplices suddenly began to laugh out loud. And then the boss, holding back his laughter, said, "What a nitpicky little fellow." Hearing the boy's request, the boss took Yu Meng's contract and handed it to Jin, saying, "Good. You should live by thinking of yourself first. Here, check it out." As the boss looked over the contract, he asked, "What do you think?" Han Yu-jin replied, Yeah, Myung-woo won't be able to get more than 10%. To which the boss added, "That's right, and that 10% will be used to pay off the debt." Hearing this and reading the contract to the end, Han Yu-jin said, "A real slave contract indeed." Tearing the contract in half, Han Yu-jin said, "Do you dare to keep our Meng-woo as a laborer?" or something like that? Seeing what Han Yu-jin had just done, the boss and his comrades looked at him and said in surprise, You broke the contract? And the curse?" After Han Yu-jin broke the contract, a system icon appeared in front of him, informing him, "Due to the termination of the contract, the curse of debuff, D, is activated." Leaning on the couch, Han Yu-jin saw another notification. "Debuff curse, D, has been removed by counter curse, L." Leaning on the sofa to take a more stable position, Han Yu-jin kicked his boss, and he was knocked backwards. Seeing what had just happened to their leader, the alarmed men shouted in fright, "Boss!" To which he shouted, "This bastard is not F-class." Grabbing his boss's head, Han Yu-jin slammed it on the floor, making it stick and leaving a mark. After striking their leader, he was already lying on the ground unconscious and unable to say a word. After knocking out one of the bandits, Han Yu-jin said, "To begin with, I am indeed an F-class man." And then he thought, that's true, with better equipment. Angry at the antics of the boy who had just knocked out their boss, the rest of the gang attacked him, shouting, "You son of a bitch, you're going to die here today." Hearing this, and seeing that he was about to be attacked by a mob of gangsters, Han Yu-jin shielded Yu Myung-woo with his body, and proceeded to the next point of the plan. Pulling out his phone, he showed it to the enemies for them to see. Seeing it, the bandit said, "It's too late to call the police." Turning the screen to the enemies, Han Yu-jin showed them that he had been on the phone with Kim Seong-han for half an hour and said, "Not the police." As soon as the command to act was given, the walls of the room immediately parted, and Kim Seong-han climbed through them. Then Han Yu-jin said, "He has been following us for a long time." Turning the phone back to the enemies and stepping aside, Han Yu-jin smiled happily and said that he had been in contact with the Abyssal Hunter all along. Hearing a noise coming from their side, the bandits looked over to the other side and saw the powerful hunter standing in front of them, and they were terrified. "What?" Seeing Kim Seong-han, one of the bandits exclaimed, "So you had accomplices?" "You bet, one bastard." Before he could say it, he was knocked out. The next blow fell on the next gangster in the room, who also tried to defend himself with a bat, but it didn't work against Kim Seong-han. As one gangster after another was thrown to the ground, the others in the room watched in fright, losing their will to fight with each passing second. Seeing that another one of their gang was defeated, even though he was quite strong, someone in the room screamed, "Brother!" Turning to his master, Kim Seong-han said, "I have come for you, Han Yu-jin." Running to his beaten comrade, Han Yu-jin held him as he watched Yu Myung-woo's debts disappear by the second, and moans could be heard in the distance. Hearing Yu Myung-woo's question, Han Yu-jin spoke to him. "From the moment we got into the car, I quietly pressed the call button." Continuing to explain how it all happened, Jin continued, "That was enough for him to understand the situation. And I told him exactly where we were, so it was easy to find us." After saying this, Han Yu-jin, along with Yu Myung-woo, watched as Kim Seong-han destroyed one enemy after another, defeating them with ease. Swinging his fists, Kim Seong-han destroyed the enemies one by one, smashing their faces. The noise from the fight could be heard throughout the building. Furious that their enemy was so strong, one of the gang members who had already been beaten, looking aggressively at the A-class hunter, loudly shouted, "You!" Having shouted this, the enemy reached behind his back and pulled a knife out of his pocket. Having done so, he immediately stood up to strike Kim Seong-han, who was unable to take his fists. As he approached the class, a hunter from behind, while he was unable to see him and was busy with other bandits, one of their comrades who had pulled out a knife shouted, "You son of a bitch! If you don't stop right now!" Hearing this, Yu Myung-woo, paying attention to what was happening on the battlefield, shouted out to Kim Seong-han in alarm, "Oh no, this guy has it!" No sooner had he said this than one of the bandits who had taken out a knife had already managed to get close enough to Kim Seong-han to strike him in the side. Seeing this, there was a shout, "Knife!" Having accelerated well and grabbed the knife with both hands, the bandit, who decided to play by the rules, felt total resistance. And looking at the place of the hit, exclaimed in surprise, "It's not possible. How?" Looking at his frightened opponent, who was confused by this development, Kim Seong-han, ready to kick the can down the road, said arrogantly, "You should have taken a weapon that is of A-class quality." Having said that, the A-class hunter struck out, which, although not as dangerous as a direct hit from his fist, was also surprisingly effective in neutralizing his opponent. Seeing what had just happened to their comrade, the other bandits looked in the direction of the hunter, and one of them said in alarm, "Doc Soo, is it a class?" "Whoa, that's it!" Looking at the burly man, who was assessing the damage to his suit, which had been cut during the attack, the bandit exclaimed, "That bastard! But this gentleman is Kim Seong-han from Abyss." Hearing these shouts from the enemies who realized who they were dealing with, Kim Seong-han, feeling superior to his enemies, shouted in a menacing tone, "Kneel down!" Hearing this exclamation from the A-class hunter, all the enemies immediately fell to the ground, lowering their heads and obeying the order, and Kim Seong-han went to his master and Yu Myung-woo, saying, "Are you not injured?" To which Yu Meng replied, "Yes, I'm fine." Looking back at Han Yu-jin, who was looking at some documents he had found in the office, Kim Seong-han spoke to him. "What should I do with these?" He replied, "An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth." After saying this, Han Yu-jin created a new contract in which he specified his rules of cooperation. After the contract was drawn up, it shone golden in color, emitting light. After creating the contract, Han Yu-jin held it out to the gang boss and said, "Here, sign it. This is an S-class contract." Seeing the contract handed to him and hearing that he had to sign it, the gang leader began to read it carefully and exclaimed, What? This is... Looking at Han Yujin, who was smiling happily, the gang leader spoke to him in alarm. 10% profit, a 50-year contract. This is a complete scam. Hearing this, Han Yujin answered him with a joyful voice. This is too much. How is this a scam? This is a super job where you just pick and choose what you think will make you money. Hearing what Han Yujin had just said and the conditions he had outlined, the gang members began whispering among themselves, and they could be heard saying, 50 years? No way. Don't make me laugh. It's as if we were sent to death. When the boss heard these conditions, he was alarmed. Ahem, such a slave contract. As soon as Han Yujin heard this, he immediately threw a pile of papers he had found in his office at the boss. Seeing what Han Yujin had just thrown at him, the boss said in surprise as he looked at the papers, What? The boy replied, I found this in the drawer. Han Yujin spread out the rest of the papers and said, These are the contracts of the F grades you brought in, you bastards. More than 30 people. Han Yujin's voice immediately turned stern as he said this, and then he added, How many of them were not crippled? The boss replied in fright, What does it matter? They all voluntarily agreed to this. It's not our fault. After saying this ridiculous justification for his actions, the boss added, And even if we were to investigate, more than half of them are already dead. As soon as he said this, he was kicked in the head. Having been kicked in the jaw, the gang boss fell to his knees, leaning on one of his hands, grabbed the place of the blow with the other, and groaned. Looking at the boss, Han Yujin just spoke to him. Worthless. Crumpling up one of the contracts he had signed with his debtors and looking down on them, the boy said, You think that if they are F-class, you don't care if they die. After saying this, he added, drilling the bandit with his eyes, If you push them with promises to take them to the dungeon, many will agree. And then it will be enough to shove them down there like some cheap expendable material, right? Loudly accusing his boss of his fraudulent schemes, Han Yujin added, Care what level? They're human beings too. Damn murderers. Hearing this, Yu Myung-woo said in surprise, Yujin. After saying everything he wanted to say to the gang of crooks, Han Yujin, looking at the frightened bandits with a domineering gaze, said, Now crawl back as you have been crawling until now. Then you will realize what you have done. Turning his back on them and slowly walking away, the guy added, Even though I really want to throw you into a high-level dungeon. Hearing this, the boss spoke in alarm, breaking out in a cold sweat. Stop! I'm guilty! We're all to blame. Frightened by Jin's words, the boss began to admit his guilt and said, We'll think it over, so just this once. Have mercy on us, okay? A 50-year contract is too much, so please understand our situation. Hearing such sincere words of confession, Han Yujin smiled happily, having been able to extract what he had been longing for, and said, Well done. As he said this, Han Yujin grabbed the gang boss by the head and spoke to him in a rough tone. If you want to think things through properly, having intimidated the gang of crooks to the desired effect, Han Yujin said, Then you must pay the appropriate price for your crimes. Am I right? The boss gritted his teeth and reluctantly agreed. Having completed the educational process and punished those responsible for using weak hunters as cheap labor, Jin, Yu-min, and Kim Sung-han were returning home when the guard reported, Yes, they've taken them to the Hunters Association. Kim Sung-han spoke through his headphones as he drove the car. We handed it over to the employee. The victims were compensated, and I'll report back later. Meanwhile, Jin, sitting in the back, sighed heavily and said, What a crazy day. Sitting in the back seat of the car with Han Yujin, Yu Meng-woo spoke to him. Thank you, Yujin. Hearing the thanks, the young man said in surprise, For what? Waving his head, Han Yujin said confidently, Oh, for today. Don't worry, it was nothing. He replied, How can I not worry? Hearing this, Han Yujin thought, Later, when your skill is awakened, I will be able to benefit quite a bit. As soon as he thought this, he saw something strange. Shedding tears, Yu Meng-woo said, You've saved me twice already. Seeing that his friend was crying, Han Yujin said in surprise, Why are you crying again? Calm down, huh? To which he replied, If it weren't for you, what would have happened to me now? Hearing such words of explanation for his tears, the boy said, It's really nothing. But he was not allowed to finish. In the middle of his sentence, Yu Meng-woo threw his arms around him, saying, Yujin! As he continued to shed tears, Yu Myung-woo added, You really are my hero. To which he replied, Yes, hey, don't stick to me. You should be thanking Kim Seung-han. He replied, You two, please fasten your seatbelts. After this crazy day full of adventures and surprises, Han Yujin immediately went to see Seok Shim-young as soon as he returned to the guild. After Han Yu-jin told the head of the Human Resources Department about everything that had happened to him, he was able to ask for a dorm room as Aram's guardian. And after he was checked in and brought to his room, Han Yu-jin stood in awe when he saw his room and said, "Wow, this is a dorm room?" Entering the room, Yu Meng-woo said in surprise, "It looks like a luxury apartment." Jin answered him while looking at the room's layout map. "It says there are 4 rooms," Han Yu-jin added without taking his eyes off the plan. "You can live in a place like this while you study." After saying this, Jin looked at his friend and added, Meng-woo, listen." Deciding to discuss some more important aspects, Han Yu-jin said, "Do you know how to do housework?" To which he replied, Well, I can make ramen." Hearing this, Jin said, "No outsiders are allowed in this dormitory, but domestic workers are allowed to live here. How about you pretend to be a domestic worker after you graduate to stay here?" Hearing such a cunning scam proposal, Yu Meng-woo said in confusion, "Yu Jin, this is..." Jin said, calming him down. "Ah, well, it certainly doesn't mean that you have to actually do the housework." After explaining this, Han Yu-jin added, "It's just that by the time you get settled in here, it will be quite a while. Eh?" After saying this, he noticed that Yu Meng-woo could barely hold back her tears. Unable to contain his emotions, Yu Meng-woo threw his arms around Han Yu-jin, exclaiming, "Yu-jin, you are so kind and a good friend." To which he replied, "Yes, you're crying again, let go." After completing the arrangements for Yu Meng, he went to bed. After a short period of time, Han Yu-jin looked into his room and saw his friend sleeping and said, "You fell asleep quickly. You must be very tired." As Han Yu-jin watched his sleeping friend, he heard him speaking in his sleep. "Ming, leave the housework to me, Yu-jin. Should I take a bath first, or dinner first, or shall I go first?" Hearing this, Han Yu-jin was confused. What kind of dream talk is this, God? I need to move things out of Yu Hyun's room. If he finds out that I'm moving, after saying this and leaving the room, Han Yu-jin opened the door and saw Kim Seong-han standing in front of him.